Thank you everybody for joining us for the last session of today. We've got a really exciting panel session. My name's Carl Howard. I'm the Managing Director for Eye Care Reliability Australia. I'd like to welcome Matthew Brierley, Jess Tandy, Georgia Molyneux. Matthew is the Operational Readiness Specialist at Santos. Jess is the Manager of Mobile Maintenance at Fortescue, and Georgia is the Head of Asset Management and Engineering at BHP. They'll be having a panel discussion on why diversity, equity and inclusion matters for the maintenance and reliability teams. Give a round of applause for our panel. I'll throw it across to Matthew to facilitate.
Yeah, thanks, Carl, and welcome everyone to the last session of the day. So we're what's standing between you and drinks, right? The pressure is on. Yeah, we're going to have a fireside chat talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, why it's important in maintenance and reliability, and how you embed it. But before we start, I'd like to just reflect on the fantastic welcome to country we had at the start of the day, and acknowledge the country we're on as well. So honour to the Whadjuk clan of the Noongar Nation who camped near the spot along the Derbyl Yerrigan and shores of now forgotten lakes. Let what we say and hear at Mainstream be a tribute to them. Respect for their knowing, acknowledge our unknowing, and hope for acceptance on this land, a land that was never ceded, always was, and always will be Aboriginal land. So, yeah, I'd like to introduce Georgia Molyneux and Jessica Tandy. My name is Matthew Brierley. So Georgia is the Global Head of Asset Management and Engineering for BHP. She leads a team of over 70 professionals across multiple sites, but her team's actually considerably larger because she has dotted lines to sites around the world. So she's accountable for full life cycle asset management of all equipment across BHP sites globally. And Jessica Tandy is Fortescue's Manager of Mobile Maintenance, responsible for a team of over 650 people. She tells me it's actually a little bit more than that, but that's a conversation she needs to have with HR. Across Fortescue's Solomon mine site. Jess has extensive industry experience, not just at Fortescue, but across other mining industries as well, mine sites, and started her career in the Royal Australian Air Force. Myself, I'm an operations readiness specialist with Santos. Currently, I've had a long career working in engineering, maintenance, operations, asset management, safety in mining and oil and gas. I've also previously been on the national board of the National Association of Women in Operations, and I'm currently the co-chair of their state committee, and published a book about gender equality a few years ago. It's on Amazon, a bit of shameless publicity there. It's called Please Don't Tell Me to Man Up, yeah, I think I'm probably the one who's bought the most of those books because I use it as a conversation starter with other guys. Yeah, so this is something it's very dear to my heart, very passionate about diversity, equity and inclusion. So let's jump in. And if you're at the session this morning, when we're talking about maintenance leaders of the future, there was a really good conversation there about diversity, equity and inclusion. And they touched on a lot of themes there, which we're going to explore as well here. It's a term, diversity, equity, inclusion, that you hear more and more of over the last few years, and perhaps even to the point where it's become a bit of a cliche. And we're maybe losing sight of what the terms really mean and why they're important. And much to my dismay, and I'm sure everyone in this room, in recent times, there's a growing backlash to the term DEI, with some countries and some very vocal and high-profile people, really challenging and debating their commitment to DEI. Even in the time that we've been talking about, as we're pulling this panel together, that has grown and grown. So it's something that's really topical at the moment. So let's jump in and talk about whether it is actually important, right? And if so, why? So Georgia, you lead a big team here in Australia, and you networked around the world. Is it important? Is diversity, equity and inclusion important to you?
Yeah, I mean, quite obviously, and I think, as BHP, we're very vocal about that, but I think more personally, it's really about what we see and the evidence we see, particularly in the frontline teams. And I think we're all aware that scientifically it's proven a diverse team is a safer one. And I think for me that stems from a reduction in the complacency. Like we're seeing a lot of events even now, a lot of the safety events that we're seeing across the industry stem from complacency. People have done the job for a long time, they've always done it a certain way. So we're seeing that, but the fresh set of eyes that comes in when we're hiring people that are either diverse in many of the different ways we have, whether it's gender, whether it's new to industry, whether it's ethnicity, it really does bring that fresh set of eyes and how do we do things differently? And even just a question like, is that really the best way to do it, or is there a better way to do it? And I think that fresh set of eyes can't be understated, particularly for an industry where we're so used to walking past standards. And I think, we've all heard the saying of what you walk past is the standard you accept. And we see that quite frequently. And even in the offices, like we see that as well, not just on the front line. So I think for me, quite obviously it's important, but the biggest factor for me is safety and safety of the teams. I think like one of the interesting ones, we had a colleague of mine up in the Pilbara chatting to a male superintendent on site actually, and he'd been with BHP for 10 years. And he said, it's funny, we talk around diversity and inclusion, and BHP's been very strong with their gender diversity targets. He said, but actually the best thing about it is that I feel more comfortable coming to work now in the last 5 years since BHP has been really pushing the diversity and the difference in the frontline teams and bringing those different skill sets and genders and ethnicities to site. People are actually stopping having conversations that 10 years ago would have been acceptable, or jokes or whatever it may be. And it's not just the people that are diverse that get the benefit. It's the people that are there every day and have been there for a long time that actually feel comfortable to be there now. They feel like they can be themselves and they don't have to cringe when someone says something they shouldn't say. Yeah. So I think for me, it's just, it benefits everyone. It really does.
So this is your typical white male who's saying that in the last 5 years, with this big push that BHP's had on driving gender quotas, there's guys that are saying, actually, this is actually a better place to work.
100%. And I think we do see it, and Jess can probably talk to it more than I can, around the frontline workshop solutions that we see now, because we know that, gender diverse people are generally speaking smaller in stature. They can't lift as much weight, generally speaking. But what that leads to is a solution that actually makes it safer for everybody. And rather than just assuming that, a 100-kilo male can lift that and lift that fine, we're actually going, well, is that fine? So now that we have to think about, there, maybe a 60-kilo female doing the same job, we make it safer for that person, but we also make it safer for everyone by coming up with a solution that everyone can use.
No, the days of being asked or expected to lift, extraordinary weights are long gone.
Thankfully.
There's too many injuries that have gone underneath swept under the carpet by guys trying to lift a lot more than they should be.
It's a good point, though. I mean, should they have been in the first place?
Exactly. But they were they were afraid to speak up.
Absolutely. And probably a lot of people with very sore backs and shortened careers from that exact scenario.
So how about you, Jess? Do you think DEI is important?
Absolutely. And, it's really interesting because I've gone through a journey, and we were talking about it a little earlier, and I guess I'll share a bit more with the room. My history, I've been in mining after leaving the military since 2002, so we're going back a little ways. And, might have worked in the same company George is in for a fair chunk of that. But I think back that I remember clearly the first time I ever was standing in a room when BHP did announce their targets for female diversity targets. And I stood there and I thought, oh my God, why are we doing this? And I actually was not... I'm gone. Hello?
You good?
Still going? Yeah, all right, back. I'm back. Okay. I've probably got a loud enough voice anyway. There's a lot of people in here that know me. Look, and I thought, why are we doing this? And I actually felt quite mortified that I was standing in that room and thinking, I don't want to be a target. I don't want to be a number in a room. This is not necessary, because I was brought up to, I was always told, through my childhood, you can be whatever you want to be. And I just was. And I just did what I wanted to do. I joined the military, only girl, 200 squadron of guys, and me as the female. And I thought, no one's ever said no to me. So why is this important? And I think over the last 20 years, though, I've actually changed my thought process and realising that not everybody had the same opportunity as me, and not everybody got told that they could be whatever they wanted to be. And I think that's what now becomes important when we're talking about diversity. It's diversity of thought. And just bringing, you want to represent, and I know Fortescue's, we're trying to put that message out there. We want to represent humanity. What is humanity to us? How do we live, and what do we see out there? And why aren't we representing that in our industry? And it doesn't mean counting heads of women, and it doesn't mean counting First Nations numbers and things like that. It just means having a really diverse team that is diverse of thought and brings something to the table and is allowed to bring themselves to work.
And what are the benefits of that diverse thought? We talked about safety, but are there...
Well, it's bringing innovation as well,
Yeah.
right? So coming from another industry and someone comes in, even when I have a contractor come through my team, and it's a huge team, and these people have come and worked from everywhere, and they'll come in there and say, why are you doing that? Like that, there's a company over here that's actually developed a tool to do that easier, and they bring that thought in, and we go, oh, well, that seems really logical now that you're sort of saying that. Like, we should have probably come up with that ourselves, but that's a great idea. And I don't think, yes, we're all competitors in the room, but nobody wants to put their people at harm or to do something unsafe or harder than they need to do it. And these are things we should be better at sharing knowledge, and having a diverse team that comes from everywhere will actually help us to get there.
And it's a competitive market, right? So you
Super
want those ideas, you want that those increments. They all make a difference.
Yeah, and it is the next challenge, right? So competitive market, we can attract it, we can go out and poach people from all the different things, and we'll just do this circular thing. But how do we actually retain the talent and make people want to stay in a team? And a really good, diverse team, people want to stay. They'll come for the leader and they'll stay for the team that's there.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's really important, and what we're seeing when we're actually going to fill vacancies is that particularly the younger generation coming through, and we've had a few chats over the course of these couple of days around how do we actually get the younger generation interested in mining and wanting to come in. And a lot of their requirements, when we're discussing in interviews with them, a lot of their questions are actually, well, what is your company doing about diversity, and how are you approaching these different problems with diversity, with inclusion? And I think particularly for WA, it's very topical and it's very front of mind with everything that WA has gone through over the last few years, that it really is one of the questions that is very forefront in people's minds when they come to join our companies. And I think it's something we need to really address.
100%, because you're going to get asked that when you're interviewing people now. We're not just turning up for a paycheck anymore. We actually want to know what the team is going to give. What's in it for me when I come and join your company? Because I've got options, right?
Yeah.
It's a very different conversation. In the past, you used to sit there in an interview and just try and sell yourself. Now you're looking for the company to you're looking for them to sell them as well in this competitive environment. So it's a value proposition that the next generation is looking for, and possibly even other generations have always wanted it as well, but just didn't feel like they were it was safe to ask.
Yeah. I think just like learning over time as well is that what I find is having a good culture in a team. So happy people come to work and they work more safely, right? So how do we have that happiness, that feeling of belonging, that feeling of, we're actually a team environment here that makes people want to come to work and not find excuses not to come to work. It's a challenge when you've got a big team. We've got to fix things. We've got to get things out the door. How do we make sure our teams are actually turning up and want to be there?
So you're creating a different culture, an inclusive culture. Yeah, so there's the retention element to it. If you've got an environment where people feel like they can speak up and their voice is heard, then there's a retention part to it. But there's this flip side that is becoming more and more prevalent, where people are asking for it, demanding it.
Yeah, 100%.
Interesting point. You say WA may be more prevalent. I hadn't really thought about that before, that there's a difference in states.
Yeah, I think it's just a situation or an environment with everything that happened in the media and with the government, particularly with the FIFO sites, quite obviously. Okay. So that it really is front of mind for people, particularly in Perth and the Pilbara, around how do we make sure that they are safe going to work. And it does come back to the safety, but 100% people are asking that when we're interviewing them, because they want to make sure they're actually going to be safe coming to work for a mining company in WA. And we've got to work through that. It's a challenging conversation. Yeah,
because I guess and it's a generalisation, but on the other states more so, they go home at night. Where here, you come to work, there's a large proportion that go FIFO, and it's basically they're living away from home, and that's your family, and you want to feel comfortable and safe in that family. Yeah, I worked for a couple of years just recently on a mine site, a gold mine, and some of the stories I heard, I helped deliver the Respect at Work program and the bystander training, and I got some slides from the Respect at Work team to deliver, and they were very vanilla to start. It was very theoretical, right? This is how you interact, this is how you intervene, but the audience was saying, this doesn't really apply to me, Matt. But, this doesn't happen here. And then there were the people, predominantly young women, that came up and said, Matt, you need to change the way you're doing this presentation. And they gave me a whole bunch of stories that were made my mouth dry, made me feel sick. Stories that they just held on to. They didn't bother going to tell HR about, but they said, use these stories to get people's attention. And I thought, right, I'm going to do it. And it changed the whole mood, and people started to pay attention, and it really helped the delivery of the training. And when I get challenged about it, why is DEI important? I often say to people, well, I want the workplace to just reflect the society that I work in, right? So, I look around the workplace, especially if I'm on a mine site, and it's predominantly male, and probably white male. And it doesn't feel natural, right? So one of the key reasons for me about why DEI is important is I want to go to work in the same environment, my society, and it reflects the society I work in. And you talked about Fortescue, Jess, and their mantra about what they're looking for.
So two things in that is actually just trying to change that rhetoric and to start thinking about what represents humanity, what represents the world that we live in, and we should be able to go to work and actually see that as well in the people that are working for us versus we're hiring, the thoughts of we're hiring you because you're ticking a box. No one wants to come to work thinking, oh, you were hired because you meet a requirement, right? So trying to change that thought process of how do we bring people in and also retain them, obviously a huge thing on retention now, but rather than make it all about the numbers, it's really trying to represent humanity as it is. Like, we look around you, there's a split in this room, probably 50-50, not going to count, but there is a split in this room, right? This is diversity in the room right now. There's people from different backgrounds, from different countries. And that's what you want to represent in your workforce, because people are going to bring something different to that workforce that you don't have right now. You don't want the cookie cutter anymore, and we want to try and change the way that we talk about that, so we're not feeling like we're just a number, or when you walk into a meeting room and you see a number on the wall and you go, hey, I'm one of them, Because, as probably some of the female leaders in the room, there's been a point in time where you've felt that and you've walked in and you've gone, yep, and then you start to think in your head, is that, why am I here? Yeah. And you start to doubt yourself. And nobody wants to feel that way, of any gender, of any race, right? So how do we just change that?
Yeah, and I think it really is a journey, Jess, and I think, everyone hates the word journey, including myself, but it really is when it comes to diversity.
Not as much as I hate unprecedented.
So, no, it really is with DEI, to be truthful, and I think, most of the female leaders that have been female leaders for a little while will have had the question or the statement put to them, oh, you're only in that role because you're a female. I've certainly experienced it myself, and I'm sure most females in this industry had. So I think really the important part behind how we move forward is actually setting the context and the reasons behind it. As we started this conversation with why it's important, the more that we're spruiking that messaging and actually just having open discussions with people who maybe don't believe, the more we can have those discussions, the further along the pathway we'll get. So it's an interesting one, and I think, as you said earlier, we're seeing backlash more broadly, quite obviously outside of Australia, around DEI, and so I think the conversations are going to come to the forefront more around why is it really that important and what is it actually delivering. And I think, for us, particularly in BHP, one of the things we did was centralise maintenance planning into the offices. And what that did was create a pathway for people that are completely outside the industry, have never done maintenance before, never done mining before. And what it did was bring this whole raft of people, regardless of gender, into this centralised team that was really supported. And to be honest, it's one of the best cultures I've ever worked in, because everyone was just trying to do their best. And one of the things that came out of that was that we were significantly more efficient. So we ended up being, top quartile external benchmarking for maintenance planning, because we actually had people thinking about doing it a different way, bringing a different lens to it, just looking at it and going, well, why are we doing that job with that job? Yeah. And people previously have just gone, that's just the way we do it. That's just the way execution like it on site, so we just do it that way. And it's like, okay, but have you actually stopped and taken a step back and understood why?
100%. And we've got a similar thing that we've been doing up at Solomon with Fortescue, and we call it our new to industry program, but actually bringing people from different walks of life in as sort of into TA roles, and then to transition into whatever they want. I find it interesting. I follow the Women in Mining Facebook pages. And a lot of people, the young ladies will get on there and they'll say, I just want to get into mining and drive trucks. Yeah. You're like, well, there's about 100 other jobs you could be doing in mining than driving a truck. And so be blunt here, but that's probably pretty batshit boring, to be honest, to drive a truck. And
it's like, that it's a pathway.
But they do. They need to see it, and they need to understand what else is out there. So we're finding that if we bring them through these programs, or one of my program leads, Kylie, put your hand up over there, talk to her about it. She is amazing. But we bring people through into just TA roles, but the exposure to the team and finding what those different jobs are, and then going into service persons, and then potentially apprenticeships and things like that. Now, as a maintenance person, I know I can't go out and recruit 40% or 50%, whatever my target is, female tradespersons. They're not out there. They're not there. Not everyone wants to do it. And even if they do, we're years behind that. But if we can organically start to look at these programs where we bring people up from the shop floor, part of a team, they're actually bonding with a team, and sort of like growing up, right? They grow up with the team, and they're actually embraced into that team, and they find their path, and they go off and do their trades, and when they're our future leaders, right? So we can have targets for female leadership now, but we can't meet them by just plucking them, like stealing them all from BHP or wherever else you want to do. We're not solving a problem.
No,
we actually need to be part of a solve by bringing in all these diverse people. Yeah. And when we started to recruit for that, we sort of threw darts at a wall, to be honest. We didn't want people with mining backgrounds. We wanted people that were just, I've got a librarian, I've got a Parks and Wildlife officer, I've got a flight steward, I've got these people that just come from everywhere, and they've never stood in front of a massive truck before. And you go back to safety and people say, oh, it's unsafe, it's unsafe. That's not the unsafe part. Bringing diversity into your workshop is not unsafe. Anyone new to industry is going to experience a different, that's up to us to fix that, but it's fantastic.
It reminds me of Google did a project, a study a few years ago to look at how to get the most efficient and productive team. So to the point you were both had talked about, and they called it Project Aristotle. So the sum of the parts is greater than, something like that, greater than whatever. And so they got all these different types of teams together, like a whole bunch of women together, a whole bunch of guys together. They got same cultures, age groups, because they wanted to work out what was the most productive team that they could get, because they wanted to have that competitive edge. And in the end, they found that the most productive, the team that really kicked it out of the park, was a team that felt psychologically safe. And that's exactly what you're talking about, right? Yeah. And that was the team. And in that team, there was all sorts of shapes and sizes and different colours and sexes and ages, but they felt safe enough to just challenge and come up with a new way of working. And that was the one that kicked it out of the park.
Yeah. And I think the more we do it, honestly, the more results we've got to speak for themselves. And I think that's something we see, time and time again, is where we actually do start doing it in the company, and people can see, oh, actually, yes, I can see, well, one, they want to come and work for that department, but two, you can see, what's coming out of it is really first class. And what we've seen as a result of that is a lot of the people that have come up through that are now out in the business in senior leadership roles. Yeah. So it just shows that the pathway's there, the results are there, and we're really driving a change.
Yeah. I just want to explore something you talked about, Georgia, as well, and I'm sure you both got a feeling on this. I know you have from our previous conversations, but this idea, this backlash to DEI, because it is really topical at the moment. And one of the common arguments you hear is, but we're a meritocracy. We promote based on skill, and it'll be a safer team if we recruit based on someone who knows how to do the job. And so it's, it's more about, their ability over their identity, and they've got this, dichotomy. I mean, there's a lot of research out there that shows why this myth of meritocracy, why it's a myth. But what are your thoughts on, were you hired because you're a woman, and how do you take that when you say, am I not, do I not have merit?
Yeah, I mean, I think personally for me, the only times I've really experienced it is with people who don't actually know me. So it's quite easy to go, yeah, okay, cool, and move on. But I think some of it does come from, people just seeing, like Jess said, seeing the number on the whiteboard or seeing, the face or the name in these roles, but they don't actually understand you and don't understand your skill set and everything you bring and everything you've worked on and projects. So a lot of the time, personally, I find it quite easy to brush off, but it does depend. And really the most important thing I find is, I think, like I said, you let the results speak for themselves, and that's generally how I operate, and how the teams that work for me see that. So it is difficult though, and particularly for the younger leaders and the new leaders. It's a difficult thing, and I think the biggest advice I can give is just to have a strong network and strong mentorship to actually go, that's not on you, that's a reflection of that person, not on yourself. So.
And Jess?
Yeah, it's actually a really good point. And sometimes you just need to go into a room and just unload with someone and just say, what? Which my boss is in here too, so I hope I wasn't hired for my gender, boss. Look, but you have that crisis, and I've had it as well, and probably not so much in this last role because I came from a similar role, but you see people look you up on LinkedIn, see your profile, oh, is this a diverse hire, who's coming, I'm getting a female manager, first female mobile maintenance manager for Fortescue here, and hopefully not the last, so we're going in the right direction. But yeah, 100%, you have those times where you do question things. And for me, like I came through probably I call it the long path to being a leader, and to talk about that a little bit. I didn't finish school, and I'm not afraid to say that. I'm not an engineer by trade or anything like that. I never finished school. I was told, earlier in my career that I wouldn't be a manager because I didn't go to university and those sorts of things. But those things were more driven for me to actually go and achieve something and do something different. Like, I can't fix trucks personally, but I have a pretty good team of people that can fix the trucks, and I have a strong, and quite a few of my team are in here as well, so probably better to ask them what I am as a manager. They might get the truth. Yeah, well, might get the truth from them. But
one of the myths of meritocracy is that you've got to have, this traditional skill set of 20 years experience and a degree or whatever.
But that's
else.
how we used to hire people, right? And I think that's why we are heading into so much of a different world now, and so much of different leadership that is more empathetic, that is more of a people leadership skill. It's very different to a technical leadership. Most of my career was spent being a technical leader. I was into asset management, into SAP and strategies and all of this side, and I went down that, there's heaps of people I run in today from my past. And then at a point in time, the same boss that's in here today said, well, you're going to go and be a people leader now. And I was like, I don't think so. But I've actually enjoyed it, and I've enjoyed it way more than I thought I would, because it's actually giving the opportunity to make something different, to make a change, and to see an amazing team under me. They just get on with stuff, and they do so well at it. And I hope I've had a little influence on them, but it's different. It's a different skill.
Perhaps part of your reticence in being a leader was because you've seen the leaders of the past and thought that's what you had to be. But in fact,
it probably has been that. And the best influence I've ever had, I think, is a couple of really, really excellent bosses that I've sort of, it is the shadow you cast, right? So the first time I ever was a people leader, I was a bit dictatorship. Yeah. I don't think any of my old employees are in here now, but I probably was a bit like, this is how I want things done, and a bit of control freak, and like can't handle the ambiguity coming out of a process systems type role. And over time, I've just gotten a bit more relaxed in it, but it's definitely that shadow and the leaders that you work for, that you actually take a little piece of that on. And then at a point in time, you want to become that person. And, the best feedback you can ever get, I was telling a story about, I had a mate, fitter, a young lady that came through our team just briefly, and I would have poached her and kept her. She was fantastic. She goes, no, I'm going off to Canada to work for Maida. And I'm like, awesome. When you're ready, come back and come and have a job with me. But she sort of reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, it's amazing to see you as a female leader in this place, because it gives you something to aspire to. And I think that's, you know, as leaders, that's all we can ask for. If you can walk away from somewhere and say, oh, I made a change, or I made a difference to this place, or to the culture, or to someone's life, then that's amazing. And I know I've been very lucky to have that in some leaders I've had. And the more I appreciate that, I hope to give a little piece of that to someone else.
Your legacy.
Yeah.
When we talked before, one of the things you said that resonated with me is your gender doesn't make you unsafe.
No.
And I think it goes back to the very first point you said about, you know, one of the reasons for DEI is, you know, you get a safer workplace. You know, it's complacency. It's other elements that create that lack of safety in the workplace. It's not your gender. If people could throw it out there, but if you get to root cause, when has anyone ever got to root cause a dossier and determined that it was a female? That's the reason.
That's it. You hit your hand with a hammer because you're a girl. Yeah.
All right, and look, you know, you hear the backlash of DEI, and it's, you know, what's in it for men. I just have to look across the street to the guy who lives across the road from me. He works for one of the large mining companies here in Perth, and he had him and his wife had their third child last year, and because of the policies that company has, he was entitled to 4.5 months full paid parental leave. He took 9 months at half pay, went out and bought a Prado, big caravan, and they drove around Australia. And I think to myself, what an amazing experience that would have been to bond with, you know, with that little baby. Of course, everyone would have been up every night, but it would have just been I was so jealous. I was so jealous. And then they came back, and you could tell he was just beaming. And then the mining company opened the door, went back in, like, you know, and things had moved on, things had changed, but there was a job waiting for him at the end of that. Sold the Prado, sold the caravan, and he's got a little people mover now, and he's just, it's such a massive life event. And that happened because of DEI, right? Yep. And thinking about it's not a zero-sum game. It's everyone benefits from it. You know, 6 of the 8 people who commit suicide today will be men. And, you know, what do most men do? They're the providers. They're out there working. And so how we define what it means to be a man, and here in Australia, you know, we need to really look at that as well. And these policies are about finding a balance, isn't it? It's just really about balance. Yeah.
100%. And look, we don't get it right all the time, and maybe some of the words that we say, we might look back and go, that wasn't, you know, the message we were trying to get across. But the intent is there, right? We want to make change, and we want everybody to come to work, be healthy, happy, and included, and form a team that, you know, makes that drive. You want to be different, right? How are we going to stand out from the competitor? But you've got to do something differently.
So what is that? So what do we do to drive and make our teams feel, you know, like DEI is really happening?
Yeah, I mean, for BHP, you know, quite obviously we have a lot of the things that most places have in terms of, you know, committees and making sure we celebrate and are really open with where we go. But I think in terms of the departments and the internal teams, the one thing that is really key is quite obviously the culture and making it fun. And I think, you know, the diverse teams will lead to that, and we are seeing that. And I think, it's really around how do we make sure that it's not just the office teams as an example, it's the site teams as well, and how do we, again, get that balance. And I think where we want to be, you know, aspirationally, is that we're not talking about DEI anymore. That's really the aim of the game, that we get to a state where that's just, as you said, BAU, and we move forward because everyone's included, everyone can be their full selves, and we don't have to have targets or anything like that to drive it. But at the moment where we're at, we need to have those targets, otherwise we're not shifting the dial, and we're not actually going to get to a place where we can stop talking about it, stop having targets and move on.
Yeah, having fun retains and attracts people. Yeah. Jess?
Open the door to something different.
Yep.
Don't look for what you've always looked for.
Yep.
So when you go and employ someone, you know, you do that standard script of interviewing and things like that. What do you get? You get what you've always got, right? Have an honest conversation, because you'll get something different from that person when you're having that conversation, and invite something different into your team. And if you're not sure that person has got X, Y, Z, or they don't have that technical skill, don't be afraid to just take a chance anyway, because I think you'll just find something different, and you'll go, actually, this could really be the shift, the game changer for me, is to open the door allowing someone, and then encourage your team to bring their full selves to work. I guess that's
And how do you do that?
just being able to actually accept people for who they are. That's what you hired them for. I actually had one of my ex-superintendents talk to me yesterday, and he gave me a really interesting story that he's now taking on as part of his leadership journey. And he said he was listening to a lady speak at a conference that had said that her boss had come to her one day and said, "Why are you not bringing your full self to work? Why are you imitating what you think people want from you as a person?" And she had a reflection in that and thought, well, why is that? And having a really diverse, open team where you allow someone to come to work and be themselves, because that's what you hired them for, right? So let people speak, let people be themselves. We don't want to get to the point that we're so closed doors or hierarchical or military or things like that. You want to let people come to work and be a bit cray-cray sometimes. That's me. Thanks, boss. But allow that to happen, because you'll find something different in what you've invited in. You'll hear something different.
Yeah. I reflect on what Drew said this morning. One of the key words that I took away was vulnerability. And you want a leader that isn't perfect. None of us are perfect, right? And if you show that you're not perfect, then it opens up people to admit their faults, but also to ask questions.
Open to different ideas, right? Because you don't want to be that smartest person in the room, but I want the smartest person in the room working for me. It's never going to be me, but I want their ideas. I want them to be part of that team and make us stand out and beat our competitors.
All right. I've been brought to an end. So final comments, Georgia?
Yeah, look, I think just being conscious and deliberate about what you do. I think we've seen, and it's, again, scientifically proven that if you tweak your job ads so it's less about what is a mandatory skill and more about what you want as a behaviour and what skills, yes, there'll be a couple that are actually mandatory, but what skills can you train the person for? And I think you see some fantastic results that way, and that's where you get that difference of people coming through. So I think that's a tactical thing that we need to get better at. But I think, as I said earlier, the main aim of this game is to get to a place where we don't need to talk about it anymore and we don't need to have targets.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm all for that too. Get rid of the targets and just let it be natural, like when we get there. Like you said, at the moment, we're still a ways away from that, and we have to shift the dial a bit. That pendulum has to swing a little bit the other way just to land in the middle. But have some programs where you're inviting people in from different industries and allowing them to try something different. It might not be, you don't hire a TA to be a lifer, a TA lifer. You don't hire an admin to be a lifetime admin. Very few people want to do these roles for life, but hire someone that's got an MBA as your admin and let them come in and find.
Yep.
Oh, we did that. We did that at the last place I worked, and she was amazing. She ends up, I think she's a BI superintendent now. But that's the sort of thing that happens, that when you bring different in, you give an opportunity to, be whatever they want. Don't expect that you're hiring someone for life.
Yep.
They're coming in and you're opening a door to something different.
Great. I'll finish with a quote from Brierley Brown. Hopefully you've all heard of her. She says that fitting in is the opposite of belonging. Because fitting in is assessing a group of people and thinking, what do I need to be, what do I need to say, and what do I need to wear, how do I need to act, and you change who you are. True belonging is never asking that, we change who we are. So as the world is debating their commitment to diversity and inclusion in organisations, I think the message from Brierley Brown sums up the challenge in front of us. Imagine the success we would have and the potential for our industry if everyone felt like they belonged, and the waste of energy that we have when people are trying to fit in. Thank you, everyone. Have we got time for questions? I did see, yeah, all right. Thank you.
We should just open up for the drinks in here. That'll make for a fun question time, right?
Thank you so much, Matthew, Jess, Georgia. Give them a round of applause. What a fantastic way to end our panel speaker session. So many valuable touch points in there. It sort of links everything that's been mentioned and spoken about today. Earlier on in this room, we were talking about the importance of steercos, different people's perspective, visions from gender, age, being neurotypical, neurodiverse. So it's kind of stitched everything together. So thank you very much for your insights. We'll open the floor up to questions. And I know there's a microphone at the back of the room, unless people would like to Okay. Yep.
Just yell.
Terry.
Say hello, and I'm Kerry Hill from Perth, Lithium, but used to work with Matthew at Woodside. And I'm really happy that you touched on that respect at work training, because I've found I've worked now in oil and gas and mining, and it doesn't matter where you are. I feel like this like psychological safety is still very generic and a bit swept under the carpet. And I went to the Women in Mining conference last year, and there were some great speakers, but no one really gave any personal insight into what was really going on. And I found on sites that my career's mainly been on site in remote locations, we have certain incidents, and then people just don't talk about it. It goes all quiet. Someone disappears. You don't hear about it again. And I understand the sensitive nature, but I'm just and I'd love to hear how you wove it in. But any other feedback from where you've worked of how it's worked, how we've had a genuine conversation about these
I think,
problems?
you don't remember slides, you remember people's stories, and we've got to be open to listening to other people's lived experiences and appreciate that's the truth, and that's the truth that's happening right here in front of me that I'm just totally blind to. And once I hear it, then my reality changes, right? So it's about empathy, and at the end of the day, DEI is just about having empathy for people.
It's experience as well, right? So, like, I could tell you some stories. We haven't got all day, but, we've come a long way in the 20 years that I've been in, the 20 plus years I've been in the industry, from, the examples that I was giving you earlier around what it was like in the military when you'd sit across the desk from your supervisor who had centerfolds under the glass, So we've come a really, really long way from there to where we are now, but we're still... It's a real struggle to have honest conversations because people get really uncomfortable. And that's what I find, that I'm just a bit more confronting now. So if someone says to me or has a comment around why, you got your job because you're a woman, or saying that, there's no opportunity for us anymore, you're only hiring girls, or things like that, I want to put it back on them and say, why are you so uncomfortable with this? What is going on there that you're feeling so uncomfortable, that you feel like... Still, 75% of every hire I'm doing in my team is a male. There's no lost opportunity there, but the feeling is there, right? So the conversation has to be had, and we have to have an honest conversation around it. Is like, how do we make a change if we keep doing what we've always done? We used to like to call it bogan mining, right? So back in the day, we're just there to get the dirt out the ground, and we'll do whatever it takes. But we've come on this journey now, and we want to be smarter, we want to be more efficient, and all these things. But we need all those different people to do that, and people are uncomfortable. But to me, is confront that, especially as a female leader. I feel like it's part of my job to confront that, and people feel uncomfortable. They do. But they're also embarrassed sometimes when it's me asking them as well, because they don't actually know how to answer it. They're quite happy to write it somewhere quietly, but have a conversation. If you're uncomfortable, it's okay, but let's talk about why.
And I think that's really important, the vulnerable leadership, like you touched on earlier, Matthew, like that is really important. And the more we get some of the new style leadership into the likes of GMs of remote sites, the more we see that, I think the more we'll have those conversations. So I think that's one positive step. But psychological safety and psychological and psychosocial hazards is really quite a big deal for us that we need to be able to work on and get better at. I think most people in the room would fully be able to acknowledge that we are not there yet. We are not there yet as an industry.
It's also the work health and safety regs.
Yeah.
It's law now, and the regulator, when they come out to site, they're asking about it. They want to see your gap analysis and your risk assessment to manage not just physical safety, but psychosocial safety.
Yeah.
So it's like, the goalposts move, but that's it now. You got to focus on it. And it's unfortunate that it took the law to drive it, but hey, it is what it is.
But like all of that stuff's always been there. It's just being highlighted now, right? It's just not bringing women into the workplace didn't change the fact that those behaviours were always there. No. It's just now we're actually being forced to actually confront it and deal with stuff that should have been dealt with before anyway. It's never okay to put someone in front of, in certain situations. It never has been. You wouldn't want your son to work there or your daughter. So,
but the Respect at Work law, when that bill was passed a couple of years ago, that really cemented things.
Yeah, it's starting to actually make us like, is this okay for anyone? It's not about bringing your diversity, and it's just anyone shouldn't be subject to some of those behaviours. So.
The gentleman in the way.
Hi, Mark Cohen from Fortescue. Thanks everyone, that was a great panel. Jess, you did get your job
Thanks, boss. Thanks, boss. Plant in the audience.
Look, you're all from big companies across the terrace and WA-based companies. Can you tell us about some of the mistakes your companies have made while rolling out DEI? So with positive intent, but have had negative consequences.
Shall I start with yours?
Look, from my perspective in BHP, absolutely. So, I mean, we put that target out, the 40% target, and we went really hard at that. And the consequence of it was we went hard at that without being deliberate and without having the thinking behind it. And we did see a lot where we landed with people that were not fit for role being in the roles. And quite obviously, as females being in the company, you feel, well, crap, that's just set us back as well, because we don't want to have to, wear that reputation that's come in from that. So I think absolutely, to my earlier words, Mark, like, we are on a journey, as much as I hate that. We are, and we have absolutely made mistakes. But I think where we're getting to, and obviously talking for BHP at the minute, we're very close to getting to target, which is great, but we now need to keep moving. What's that next step? How do we actually sustain this, build the cultures?
Yeah. Am I allowed to talk about BHP as well? No, look, I 100% agree with you. I think the setting of that target, putting it out there, sort of almost made us a target as well, which was quite uncomfortable, and probably not the right rhetoric. And I think they've probably realised that over time, and Fortescue have gone similar paths. However, what we're now seeing is how do we retain people, attract and retain. It's that retention piece as well. It's pretty easy to go and sort of pick people up and whatever, and we've probably found that as well, that we can go and poach someone and offer them a bit more money or a nice job here, but how do we actually keep people happy and retain? So yeah, the mistake is probably focusing too much on a target. And also I think how we talk to our teams about it, why we're doing it, we probably don't give people enough of why.
That's the point I've seen.
Yeah.
I can't talk to the current company I work for, but previous companies, we haven't explained the why to our leaders. So when they get the pushback, they fall over. Right? They can't stand up and explain why. And it may not be quotas. It may be why am I going to this training? Why can I not use these nicknames anymore? Why have you made these changes around the site? Why have you removed surnames from PPE? And predominantly guys, but the workforce and the leaders can't talk to the why. So we need to. Before you roll this out, you need to get the leaders in a room and not just explain it, but help them roll around in it and explore the language so they can put it into terms that they are comfortable with.
Yeah, because it'll be nothing worse than someone rolling something out that they don't believe in, and it's really
it undermines the whole credibility.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions?
One for me. Dave Alexander, Policy Asset Manager. Been in maintenance reliability all my life. The last 8 years, trying to recruit reliability engineers is a challenge from a diversity. So we would advertise 95% would be male, 5% would be female. And then I look at that female population and it's like 95% of that 5 is actually from subcontinent. And I go, well, I don't think we're doing enough to attract diversity into the industry in the first place, not even just retain.
Yeah.
How do we get young ladies and everyone else wanting to be an engineer?
Yeah, we talked about it first thing this morning, right? You got to widen that pipeline. You got to talk about it at primary school. You got to talk about it, in kindergarten. It's the way we box people in at a very, very early age.
100% agree. And I think, and this is where I say about thinking differently or having pipeline or pathways and things. So mine's trade-based at the moment. I'm really focusing on a pathway into a trade and how we actually set people up into that. But engineering it's the same scenario. How do we get people when they're still at high school and they're thinking about the subjects they select, and how do we go and talk to people about what they can do and what's out there and what career paths they could take?
Yeah, and I think
why is subcontinent more populated with a female engineer than Australia?
Well, a study done a couple of years ago by Deloitte called Breaking the Norm looked at gendered norms here in Australia and the way we do box males and females into specific roles. And they estimated the lost value to Australia each year is $128 billion and 460,000 jobs. So, we have to really look at ourselves and think about the way we inform and talk to, the younger generation, because that is setting them up for the future. And, maybe that's different from other countries.
I think 100% in that space is that you can't expect that you can fix it all now. You can't just go out and hire 100 engineers, right? Female engineers, they're not there. But how do you form part of the solution? How do you get into the schools, talk to them, offer traineeships, offer pathways of people to actually come in and learn about it and grow into that role over time. So you might not be able to fix it today, but like some of the things in the projects that we're doing now, I'm hoping that that's going to fix 4 or 5 years' time. They'll be our future leaders and we'll leave that legacy, right? We'll open the door to anybody. You can do anything you want.
But what defines a reliability engineer? Maybe we need to also think about that. Could it be a female inlec, that comes in and you teach her the skills that you want to do reliability engineering, and she brings all of that industry knowledge from her trade background. So
that's a really good point, right? Because I would never apply for a role that said reliability engineer on it. But do I think that I couldn't do it? Because my passion's been asset management for many, many years. I've used the reliability tools. I've done all of that. I've created strategies in that. Does that make me not a reliability engineer though? Because on paper you wouldn't hire me when you looked on paper, because I didn't go and do an engineering degree. Do you know what I mean? So maybe think differently. What is it that you're actually looking for and what is it that you actually need?
And what are you advertising for? And I think females, if they, again, going back to science, if they don't fit 95% or 100% of what you are saying is a mandated skill, they just won't apply.
Yep.
Whereas if you say, well, there's 5 that are truly, a core mandate, the rest I'll train, you'll see the pipeline open up as well.
Before you close off on that, I'll say some of the best reliability engineers I've had are not engineers.
I was a reliability superintendent and I went to year 10 at school, so I've got 2 trades, I will say, but I didn't, I'm not an engineer.
Best engineers are trade-based.
Yeah.
Practical.
Even in the military we found that. Do the trade, then the engineering.
They
Brilliant.
fix things.
Practical.
So I used to go to schools to promote chemical engineering to kids. I did it for many years. And you used to baffle kids because it's really hard to try and explain what chemical engineering is.
I still can't my own one.
But I also did fire and rescue as well. So I used to bring in all my fire and rescue gear, all the breathing apparatus, all the extrication stuff. But what they loved the most was the little bubble suit that we used to wear. And I used to explain to them that the chemicals that we make have so much hazard to it. And it used to give them this dimension that it's not all about, science and things like that. You can also work as basically a fireman or something like that. Or what I also used to do is I stopped with all of the technology and stuff. And I was used to show them photos of us lifting, 250-ton tanks and things like that, or really, really big welding jobs, or things that have gone wrong. I love that.
They like the cool stuff, right?
But what I was really trying to focus on was like, trying to engage kids to think that it's not all about, like trying to get them into that sort of, it's like space.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that tended to work a lot better as sort of being a little bit different.
Yeah.
But also on the difference thing as well, when I was on the emergency response team, I was on for 18 years. Everyone was 6'2", they could deadlift almost twice their weight. They could bowl a 64 hose straight. When it came to confined space rescue, we were all useless.
Yeah.
The only person that could really do it was someone that weighed about 30 kilos soaking wet, because they'd have to go in and maybe give someone insulin under a collapsed scaffold. So whenever we had fire jobs, the 30-kilo person was the entry control officer. It was basically the boss of the site. But we did need a diverse team. But also the best medics as well, because we wouldn't want to have to lower someone down that weighed 210 kilos because you have to haul them back up. So you're right, diversity actually does make
a better team. Yeah.
Don't get her to bowl the hose, she's not going to be able to do it. But don't get me to go into a 300 by 300 hole, because I can't do that either. And where's the judgment, if you know what I mean?
Play to people's strengths, right?
So just talking on that school thing, by the way, we just had a private school come up and visit us on the mine site and feel kind of a little bit bad because all these all these young men that are getting their very expensive private education walked away from that wanting to be fitters on the trucks. So I'm sorry for any of you that are parents in the room that we're now recruiting your children. But like, it is about seeing things out there and experiencing what's out there. So, you know, if you're trying to recruit, like, yeah, get people up, do something different, open the door to showing people what you're doing. It's not a secret, and people get excited by
People
being
just don't know,
seeing it.
right?
They don't.
You don't know what
I just
you
want
don't
to
know.
drive trucks.
Yeah, and
in
suddenly
the
they're
mine,
exposed to
that's
different
it.
experiences.
I just want to drive trucks, but yeah.
Good stuff. Thank you so much for the questions, and thank you again, Matthew, Jess, and Georgia, for your insights during the panel discussion as well as the answers. Thanks again.
Thank you. Well done.
Just a final reminder, I've done it on each session, just to fill out your evaluation forms on the Mainstream app. That is our final session today, so thank you so much for joining us. We will be doing demos from IntelliPermit and Verbrek upstairs, but I wish everybody a great evening. Please do stay with us for the Scient Drinks reception as well. Thank you.